You know the drill of these videos. After finishing the game, let's dive into their story, gameplay, graphics and music. Just before starting, The Lost Child is an obscure game. Some people got to know this entry because El Shaddai, Ascension of the Metatron. And yeah, it was quite unique, where there is a kind of link here, however there's no need to play it. Aside from that, I would say that this entry lived through shame. But is that true? Without further ado, let's begin. The Lost Child opens with a small monologue about the issues that this world will have to go through, the root of all evil, and how in a certain way Lucifer helped in some ways for these things to happen. The deal here is that this is not only limited to a war on Earth, but also against God. However, God has always that chosen one, the fortunate or unfortunate savior, who will have to fix all of this. Summarizing the first events, we follow the steps of a silent character named Hayato, the chosen one who works on a magazine that checks topics of the occult, this time investigating incidents on the subway, where women who wear purple jump to their end. While interviewing her around, he's told that in these incidents there's always something like a shadow pushing this woman. Ironically, that is what almost happens to him, but a girl saved him. Kind of flustered, she also states that Hayato has to leave, and that he has to use what's inside the case. Soon after, she runs out of the station. A few days later, he's at his office, but there is a girl who says that she's an angel. Perhaps for his line of work he doesn't pay attention to Lua. That's when his manager appears, asking Hayato what are the juicy stories. This way, Suratani sends them off to look for scoops. And while doing that, they meet an interesting duo, a geezer who tells him to get rid of that rare case, and a girl in a spa where something like an angel was seen. However, Lua and Hayato were not able to get a good story. While walking to a park, a hooded man steals Hayato's case, so they start to chase him. In this persecution he gets injured, but seems like blood was the key to open the case, where he sees 3 items, a weird gun named Gangor, able to capture demons, a plate with Valvere's name, and something like a tablet. Lua takes the tablet and Hayato the gun. That is how our duo fight the demon, where they capture it and moments later summon it as an ally. This is how their journey begins, capturing higher beings in a war that ends up involving demons, fallen angels, overlords, and even gods. And while it may sound as an intriguing story like Shin Megami Tensei, unfortunately it falls short. And I will say that it happens like that because of the way in which this tale was written, as sometimes they drag the narrative a freaking lot, diminishing the interest quite fast. And don't get me wrong, it is entertaining, but it didn't meet the serious standard that these stories need. And yeah, I consider it as a wasted opportunity, because they tried to combine religion, some esoteric ideas, and a dash of Lovecraft. And while those main topics are fascinating in their own, you cannot expect the player to catch every single idea written between lines. I mean, freaking deities were like politicians saying a lot without saying anything. And to put the last nail, Lua's attitude was something I didn't like at all. Then again, the serious approach that this tale needed. I know this may be seen as a double standard coming from the guy who plays a lot of random stuff, but there are stories where you know they have to put some extra effort to make it really worth it. To me, it is a 6. It is not bad, I found it enjoyable, and there are some moments where they redeem itself for few scenes, but never keeping the same inertia to consider it decent. Gameplay wise, let's divide this section into dungeons, customization, and bosses. This is a first-person dungeon crawler or JRPG, where we will have to traverse multiple dungeons, increasing the size of the floors and layers as we advance. With this, consider the first dungeon something standard, to let the player get the basics. And do yourself a favor by increasing the movement speed, as it can be way too slow if you keep the normal one. In any case, here do not expect to see field skills, like some other JRPGs, having to fly over pits, destroying walls, and so on. Also, do not worry about the stupidly complex maps, where you may start to wonder where in the actual heck you have to go. If that happens, it will be in some subquest, where ironically they may tell you things like, hey, there is an abnormality in this area, seems like cats are gathering around, go investigate what's going on. And yeah, good luck finding the specific spot where you need to step. Well, what starts happening is that puzzles will take an important role, as you need to press switches in the right order. That is how I will summarize it. And while they present them in different ideas, it's always something that you need to figure out, like, If water passes to this place, then if I move that other valve it has to send water this way, giving me access to that corridor, and then by moving that other valve I can complete the puzzle. At first they are not that big of a deal, but they start to get a bit more complicated and the post-content is filled with them. But don't worry, that is just the post-content. The normal story is quite entertaining. Few are the ones that I would say, yeah, I didn't really get it. The customization in The Lost Child is at first glance quite big, but once you get what happens, it is something rather simple. There are 5 elements. You know they work in a classic rock, paper, scissors idea. Hayato and Lua cannot be changed, where if Hayato falls in combat like some old school RPGs, it's game over, so always keep him safe. As you level up, you can increase some points wherever you want. On this front, Hayato will not learn any skill, but he can get ammunition for the Gangor through subquest. Lua on the other hand will learn multiple skills along the journey. They happen at random, and yeah, they may F you up, as she may learn them in a turn where you wanted to cure. This same principle applies for any other ally. They may learn things at random, of course helping their main attributes. As for your other 3 spots, yep, you guessed it right, you will have to fill them with demons. What's important here is that you need to capture them, so always keep in mind your average damage, as you can beat them, and some do not reappear until the post-content. And be careful because you cannot use demons in the same turn as you use your Gangor. Each demon will require lots of experience, as you need specific points to level them up. If you beat demons, you get red experience, if you beat fallen angels, you get purple, and angels give you blue. And I don't recommend you to mix them as the penalties are quite high. With that idea in mind, always look at the rank. The bigger it is, bigger stats and slower to train. Unfortunately, it is quite random at first. You don't really know their rank until you evolve them, which can be done twice. Common units ask you for Darwin's branch, then fruits, but late companions ask you for special items, which can only be obtained by beating specific enemies. So the only chests that you really care about are the golden ones. The brown ones are random items, which can give you stupidly good loot or pure garbage. Well, the deal is that you have to be a bit strategic, as there are some difficulty spikes. At first you won't be able to do as much as your units will fight for experience, so once you have the chance to add a fallen angel, do it. And once you have the chance to add an angel, do it, so you will be able to share experience in a better way. Otherwise it may be a bit complicated. But don't worry, for the most part it was an easy JRPG. Just few fights at first can be a bit tricky, and as you advance in this game you will have to change units, because at first the best you can expect is to get something like rank 6, which is quite low, and plenty of other demons will get stuck at 5. At the middle of the game you will find rank 7, 8 and in the last stretch 10. My main complaint here is that the creative group behind these demons didn't pay that much attention, as you will find plenty of wind demons, then pure water, then wood, and this can be annoying as you won't be able to balance your team with good ranks, as most of them will be electric. This is where I would say, spice things up, having a bit of everything as there are 5 freaking elements, but it was like, "Niet Sonny, here you will only see this element, so please reach the next area, so you can find some more." This is something that needed to be thought in a deeper way, because it became quite predictable and easy to manage. As for the bosses, few are the ones that I will say, yep, they were quite troublesome. Perhaps the first big challenge is a fallen angel that is able to charm your squad, so having to deal with her attacks and the chances to lose your healer or a hard physical unit are terrible. As for late bosses, oftentimes you can abuse from buffs and debuffs. While the game isn't that good explaining how much they increase or decrease stats, you can notice the difference. So, as soon as you keep a decent balance or rush through their HP, you won't have issues. On this front, if you're a seasoned role-playing gamer, hard difficulty may be a better option, as plenty of encounters can become into something trivial, but remember, if Hayato falls in combat, it's game over. With this, I will say that its gameplay is a 7.5. It is slightly above decent RPG. While I consider puzzles something entertaining, sometimes going for the same idea with different presentation turns into something tedious, and getting stuck with similar elements is also kind of annoying, considering that there are 5 of them. But putting some details aside, I will say that it was an enjoyable journey, with some challenging parts here and there, sometimes having to capture demons, sometimes getting into difficulty boss fights, and so on. In the graphics section, I checked glitches, performance, aesthetics, and other visual things. I had no issues with this game getting close or stuff like that, and I never experienced issues in detriment of the gameplay, or something worth mentioning. Through the tale you will see some videos, rather than the visual novel stuff. I liked most of them, as I believe you get a better idea about some characters, scenarios, or different details. Also, it isn't that common to look at something like this in a JRPG. As for the general execution, I would say that I do not go harsh on these games, because more often than not, they are made on a budget, and it is always easy to see, as they have classic visual novel elements, few sprites while talking. They can go for basic 3D modeling or 2D sprites, oftentimes stretching the images or giving them some slight movement here and there, so it will be done from my side to critique something that I know it's not going to happen. Well, on that front, I have a divided opinion, starting with Lua's attire. The thing is that the way she was written and dressed unfortunately don't go that well for this kind of concept. And yeah, let's not go that far. Her sister on that front would have been a better approach. It doesn't have to be something that sophisticated, but it is more about little details that feel off, as well as the bloodstains that some people have around. At first I thought that it was because of the subway incidents, but seems like that wasn't the case. Then I had this idea like, oh, perhaps they are just representing the tainted humans or something along those lines, because at first you will see that a lot. So considering that there is a war and different factions do not look at the humans that well, yeah, I had that idea, but seems like that wasn't the case. Perhaps I was indeed trying to read a lot between lines in a game that doesn't use those elements that effectively. So I stopped caring about those details and simply went with the flow. However, on the other hand, I liked how some dungeons were represented. For example, the first area is like a bunch of buildings and apartments fused together, with a kind of subway, or other dungeons that look like warehouses, while kinda distorted as they do not exist in the real world. I like how they looked, and those were the areas I enjoyed the most. Where it stopped to go that well is when they start to visit caves or simple cities. Those are the ones that do not have interesting aesthetics. In a sense, I ask myself like, what else do you expect out of a cave? And to be fair, plenty of JRPGs can become monotonous because of that. But I also have to say that there are plenty that have shown amazing executions. The artistic ideas I liked the most in all of this mess were the enemies. Well, sure, some are like, who the heck thought it was a good idea? I also have to say that plenty of demons were of my liking, even grotesque, but that is the point here. And there is something I found intriguing. Since when this concept of the fallen angel began to be shown between humanoids and machines? I knew about the change between biblically accurate angels and the French idea about them, but this isn't the first time I see fallen angels be represented like that, so this is where I got captivated a bit more. Considering all of these ideas, I would give it a 7.5. In general, for a game with these concepts, I believe it is slightly above decent. It would have been way better, but that would be by addressing multiple details and executions. And last but not least, its music. This entry has like 33 tracks, going for around 1 hour and 20 minutes. For the most part, I would say that they fall under the category of ambience tracks, at least while diving into the dungeons, where I will say that the first 3 tracks were of my liking, as it is but pure wind and other sound effects. But once you reach a deeper area in that dungeon, they threw this kind of intriguing composition between air instruments, slow percussion, that gave the dungeon an interesting atmosphere. And in all honesty, I like this slow transition. Of course, once you get into a fight it resets itself, so I will say that it was quite chill and fitting for the general idea. And I felt the same for the following 3 or 4 dungeons, but later they were not of my liking at all. The intrigue and suspense were lost, and while they fit the dungeons in a certain way, it doesn't help that much that they become longer and longer. So you will get stuck listening few compositions, and that is where the 1 hour and 20 minutes start to become much more noticeable. While basic in nature, the combat theme and some other boss tracks were interesting, as they were quite lively with the string and percussion instruments, but for the most part, I will say that the general compositions feel quite chill, like a save room out of Resident Evil, and I gotta say that I don't dislike them, but after a couple of sips of water and being tired, It may not be the best of compositions. With that, I will give this soundtrack a 7. Unfortunately, out of those 33 tracks, like 8-10 of them were of my liking. And while I give the benefit of the doubt to other criteria like graphics and stuff like that, I cannot really forgive that much the OST. Considering that plenty of other JRPGs with basic ideas have killer soundtracks, like The Dark Spire or Etrian Odyssey. The Lost Child final score is a 7. This is not a game that I can openly recommend to even people who enjoy JRPGs. It is a decent entry, and I don't think it is as bad as the few reviews you can find about it, but it is fair to mention that some ideas needed to be polished in a better way. The concept is there, but it falls short once you put into perspective how great it could have been if it had taken a much more serious approach. So, I only recommend it for those who want to have another turn-based JRPG. If you do not have that itch, it's okay to let pass this game. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.